Welcome back to a very cold, wet and windy Thursday in July. It's currently just after milking, so it's like 7:45 in the morning, and because my dad's away for the week, I'm having to move the fence before I let the cows out, so that's what we're currently doing. Unfortunately, the cows came into the house again last night, so we're back to feeding a heap of silage, which really is not ideal when it is the start of July. I am now at the point of being pretty much certain that we are going to be short of silage this winter. And that's kind of what I want to focus on with this video, is trying to assess how much grass am I going to be short? Why am I going to be short that grass? Is there anything I could have done to avoid this? What am I going to do to try to limit its effect? And importantly, how much is the lack of growth and the bad weather over the last, what is almost a year, going to cost me? Farming has to be one of the only industries where bad weather will actually cost you money. And it's one of them things which no one really ever talks about. It's like they talk about the weather, whether it's good or bad, but it's pretty hard to put a financial implication onto it. And that's what I want to try to do. I also got some grass samples taken yesterday from my grazing platform, so I'm going to share them with you, and it will help explain the first part of the cost of the bad weather, which is the current cost, the current effect on my herd. And I also got a sample done of my first cut silage, which is the more concerning of the two samples. Honestly, if you told me it was currently October, I would absolutely believe you. It is freezing cold. What a year 2023 and 2024 has been. To be honest, I think the last good year in farming, like weather-wise, was probably 2021, which is now 3 years ago. So this is the grass that the cows are coming into today. Hasn't been topped, hasn't been pre-mowed. This is just sort of as is from the start of the year. Pretty good cover, and I would be very happy with this. This is sort of what I would consider decent grazing for cows. You can see they're actually doing a really bad job of cleaning the field out. I mean, there was 186 cows in here yesterday. They should have eaten way more grass. But there is a reason why they're not eating a lot of grass, and that's just because it is so wet. But we'll get to that shortly. I need to take this wire down, go back up to the farm, let the cows out, and then I'll show you the results of the grass samples we done yesterday. I'm now too warm, and I was freezing no more than 5 minutes ago. I think I'm fighting off some sort of virus, to be honest. Every muscle in my body hurts this week as well. It's probably the Kovac again. I've had it like 20 times at this point. Right, our grass samples. So I'm going to leave the silage sample because hopefully I'll have the proper silage sample back tomorrow. So I can add a bit of the video in about the silage sample. Enough to say it wasn't great, right? But let's focus on the forage samples from the fresh grass, which is what the cows are grazing today. So I'll start with the good bits. Energy values were excellent, 12.5 ME from the grass the cows are eating. The protein values were okay, 15 or 16%. Plenty of years the protein would be over 20% at the moment, but I was slightly worried the protein values would be even lower than that, so I will take 16% of highly digestible protein. NDF was incredibly low at just 20%, but that's kind of what you expect on like a 22-23 day rotation. But the big issue, the big problem with the two grass samples that I took yesterday was the dry matter. So one sample was 8.4% dry matter and the other was 8.5% dry matter. Now, the NIR machine can be thrown off in a bit of the edge cases, but even if we say that it was maybe 50% off and the actual dry matter value was closer to like 15%, that is still a big problem for trying to graze cows. And the issue is cows cannot physically eat enough grass to meet their demand. And that actually explains a lot of the problems I've been having this year getting my cows to milk. They should be going into really good grass. I should be able to pull my feed rate back, so how much meal I'm feeding my cows, but I'm just not able to. Last week I tried to pull my feed rate back by just 1 kilogram a day once the cows came round to the pre-mowed grass, like the really nice young leafy grass, and when I pulled the feed rate back by 1 kilogram, I lost 2 litres of milk. So by trying to save money on meal, I cost myself twice that amount of money on milk yield. So I very quickly had to put my feed rate back up again. That was actually the reason why I called the nutritionist here yesterday, just to try to get an idea as to what's going on, why is my feed rate so high, why are my cows not milking well, and it comes down to 2 things. Number 1, the dry matter of the grazed grass. The quality's there, but the dry matter's not. And number 2, my silage quality is not what I expected. Probably need to walk up behind these cows to make sure they all come out of the house. Sometimes you get 1 or 2 that just decides they want to stay in today. This is what the cows will be grazing tomorrow. Like, it looks like such good grass, but they just can't physically eat it. So I suppose that's the first unseen impact of this showery weather. When you're trying to graze cows, your dry matters aren't there, your cows can't physically eat enough grass, and so it costs you milk yield. And to be honest, the dry matter of the grass is not something I usually pay attention to, but after them results yesterday, it's something I do need to be aware of. There is some things I could try and do to mitigate the variation in dry matter based on a showery day or a dry day. I could feed more meal, that's the main lever I could pull. I could put more silage in, let them buffer feed for longer, but all of that stuff takes a lot of time, a lot of work, and I'm not sure it'll have an overall net positive effect. Is that the last cow? Let's go find out. I think it is. Do we risk it? I say we do. How do we quantify the financial effects of the wet grass, basically the bad grazing year? Well, for the last 3 or 4 months of grazing, my feed rate has been stubbornly stuck at just below 0.3 kilograms a litre. When I tried to reduce it closer to what it normally is, I got a milk yield crash, so I had to abandon that plan. A normal feed rate for me around May and June is about 0.24 kilograms a litre. So I've been feeding 0.05 kilograms extra meal for every litre of milk I have produced. And when you work all that back to pounds per day, it comes out that I have been feeding around 80 pounds a day more meal than I would in a normal year. And that 80 pounds a day is not because of how I've managed my grass, it's not because of the type of grass, it's not anything in my control. It is actually just entirely down to the weather. So grazing grass quality at 80 pounds a day over a 100-day summer is coming to 8,000 pounds less money I have because of a bit of rain. And that's only the first step. That's not even us considering the amount of growth that we have had this year. I'm now freezing again. Ugh. The way I can quantify the effect of the bad growing year on our grazing platform, the lack of grass we have had, is really to talk about how much silage we have used up. Because that's what we do if we don't have enough grass to graze. We bring our cows in at night, we feed them silage, and that extends our grazing. And whilst the covers of grass for the next 3 days look wonderful, in 4 days' time, the cows are going in here. And there's absolutely nothing on it. Like, there's genuinely nothing on it. So I'm just going to have to skip this field. I honestly don't know what I'm going to do. Grazing cows is so much fun. I just love it. It seems to be that 1 in every 4 years, grazing cows is just perfect. Everything goes well, makes you loads of money, best system ever. And then you have to struggle for 3 years of absolute terrible weather, problems all the time, inconsistent milk yields. And then just as you're like, oh, maybe I should just keep my cows housed all year, maybe that's the better option, you get another great year and you're like, you know what, grazing cows is fantastic. Anyway, that is chapter 1 of this video closed. Grazed grass is costing us money this year. It's not going well, it's challenging, it's difficult, and it's all the weather's fault. I'm just setting up my tripod now to take a photo for the thumbnail. This is like a little bit of behind the scenes for you. The faffing about involved in making a YouTube video is a lot. So my thumbnail idea is I want a shot of the silage pits, because that's sort of the main focus of this video is I'm going to be short of silage, what am I going to do? And I'm going to have the 2 tractors in it. One, because there just happened to be parked there. I did not do that on purpose. And two, tractors in a thumbnail help a lot. I don't know why, but like all of you, I will click on a tractor way before I click on a field or a cow or something like that. And an interesting fact for you all, that YouTube will count a view if people watch it for more than 30 seconds. So now your retention time, how long people watch the video, really matters to how many people see the video in the first place, so they have the choice to click on it. But it counts as a view and you're paid after 30 seconds. Okay, that's not bad. Let me move it up a little bit. Oh, I like the rain. Hopefully you'll see that in the actual finished image. I'll stand on this side. I like that. Right, let me change it to camera mode. Welcome back to chapter 2. I honestly have no idea why I've decided to do chapters, but we're going with it. So we're going to break up me complaining about having no grass, and we're going to plough a field for reseeding. This does kind of tie in, since the reason I'm reseeding this field was it was badly poached because of the wet weather in the springtime, and it needs reseeded. It's just not growing the amount of grass it should. It's growing like 2/3 of what I would consider to be normal. So my logic is, if I skip a rotation now, I should then get a grazing off it mid-August, mid-September and mid-October. So I will end up with 3 extra grazings at the cost of 2 grazings. So I am up a grazing and I have a field reseeded, which will give me even more grass for next spring. So I think it does make sense. But before we get to that, I have a point to change on the plough and a skimmer to change as well. I actually have 4 new points for this whole side, but we're only going to change this one. It is by far the worst one. Definitely should have been changed before now. The rest of them aren't actually too bad. I think I just turned them round, but this back one is cracked in 2, so that's why I didn't turn this one round. And the bottom of the plough got all new points earlier in the year. I'll leave you in here in the dry while I do this, and I'll get soaked. It shouldn't take long. Let's just check I've got the right side, because this happens to me all the time. I do. And now I need to get the right size socket and hope these come off. Oh, so easy. I have new screws, that's okay. I have new everything. That's the old point. You can see pretty badly worn. Whilst the plough does seem to take a lot of wearing parts, and I'm sure they are expensive, I don't even ask the price to be honest, but they are fairly handy to change. Right, now skimmer plate next. So how on earth am I meant to get that off? Oh, I need spanners for this. I don't have spanners. Where am I going to get a spanner? This is where you lose all of your time looking for something. I kid you not, the forecast gave it to be dry at the minute. It was not meant to rain today. It is now lunchtime and it has done nothing but rain all morning. Jeepers. It might be dry for a few minutes. I can bring you out to see my struggle. So the bolt we need out is right here to get this plate off. Once we get it off, it's easy to get a new one on. That's tightening, don't do that. No, it's popped out again. Darn it. Let's just, right, we're in. Right, I'm gonna hold it. This is dangerous. This is dangerous. This is probably stupid. Come on, go on. Yes, right, one off, one to go. Ow! Use the plate itself as a wedge. Yes, 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 yes. We got another quarter of a turn. So I have now wedged a piece of metal in behind the plate with my hammer, and I'm hoping I can create enough friction that the bolt will turn before the head slips. This is not going to work. When it doesn't work, I'm going to go and buy an angle grinder. Ah! I need to plough my field. I wonder is my neighbour at home? It's just turning. It's just literally turning. Why is it turning? Oh my goodness. This is not what I need. Right. I will be back when I have a solution. After an hour, I finally got it off. We just ended up cutting the bolt off at my neighbour's house. So I know I look calm and collected, but that was seriously infuriating. And I'm probably going to have to edit down all of that sequence to like 2 minutes, but that actually took me over an hour. It's not my best ploughing ever, but it's doing the job. Wow, it has got wet overnight. Oh my days, I might not actually get this ploughed. When did that happen? But before you say anything, it's because I'm ploughing around a curve on purpose, okay? It's meant to be that curved. Anyway, that'll do us for chapter 2. On to chapter 3. Today really did not go to plan. I didn't get anywhere near the amount I expected ploughed, so I'm back over this evening to finish the ploughing. It's currently 7:30. I want to watch the election results at 10, and I probably have 2 to 3 hours ploughing to do. So I need to go and get started, but before I do that, I am going to do chapter 3 of this video, which is the silage situation. The late spring definitely did hamper our first cut. Now, it looks like we got a very similar amount of first cut to what we did last year. However, there is 2 very important things to note with that statement. Number 1, it was cut over a week later, so that's over a week less growth that we've actually managed to harvest. And number 2, and most importantly, I don't think it's going to test very well. And the first bit we've tested really bad. But before we get to the test results, let me just drive home a point for you all. It is currently the 4th of July, so I have essentially got 2 to 2.5 months left to grow silage and fill these silage pits. And this silage pit looks remarkably empty, and we are eating through that first cut at pace because the cows are being buffer fed and they're in at night. And our second cut silage is even worse. You can kind of see it behind all of this machinery. We have essentially filled 4 bays. Our second cut should have filled more than 4 bays. So we are lucky in that our third cut has grown really nicely, and there's actually a pretty decent crop of grass on it. But even if we don't cut that for another 2 to 3 weeks and we actually give it time to try to get a bit of bulk into it, there's no way our third cut is cramming either one of these silage pits. And if we don't cram either one of these silage pits with our third cut, we definitely aren't going to come close to filling them with our fourth cut. And that's a big problem. So on the amount of silage, I am 100% convinced, barring a tropical autumn where I can graze my cows to the end of November, I am going to be short of silage. So I need to take steps to address that. I've already bought some round bales and I'm feeding them to dry cows, heifers and even the Frisian bulls. So the only thing getting what is meant to be good silage is the dairy cows. I have also pushed my feed rate up, and I'm going to continue to push my feed rate up even if grass quality does improve, just again to try and save on silage, to try to keep the cows out at night, to try to make sure that I actually have enough grass in my silage pits to take me through the winter. I'm pretty certain everyone is going to be short of silage this year. Plenty of people haven't even lifted their second cut yet. I know most people will be like, it's the 4th of July, of course we haven't lifted our second cut, but I honestly think there's going to be a big issue with grass supply. The caveat to that, of course, is if this all turns around, we get a really strong 3 months of growth, that can fix a lot of problems, but I'm planning that that isn't going to happen. So when we came off last year's second cut silage and the cows went on to this year's first cut silage, I expected the cows to remain pretty much the same. Last year's second cut was 12.1 ME, some of the best silage we ever made, and I was optimistic that this first cut would be equally as good. However, this was the silage sample, so it really wasn't even close, and when the cows went on to it, I noticed that they instantly dropped another litre. Any night the cows were out in the fields, even though the dry matter of the grass is rubbish, our milk yields would have went up. And when our cows come into the house at night and we're getting fed this first cut silage, they have been going down in milk. That is very unusual for us. Usually, if we buffer feed silage, if we bring them in at night during the grazing year, and we feed them what is usually good silage, it has no effect on milk yield, or sometimes in wet conditions, it'll even put our milk yield up. So before we look through this silage sample, I do want to point out something really important, just to try to give you my understanding as to why this silage sampled so badly. Everything we've sampled here, everything along this face is Italian ryegrass, and it's really, really obvious to look at because it comes with really big leaves and big stems. I have 50 acres of Italian ryegrass. It was all lifted at the same time, hence why it's all at the front of the silage pit. It was also lifted at the end of the silage, hence why it's all at the front of the silage pit. And about 50% of the Italian ryegrass was not lifted for fifth cut at the end of last year. So what that means is there was tons of dead material at the bottom of the crop, which was harvested, brought into the silage pit, which is why I think this tested so badly. I am really, really hoping that is the reason. We will find out in another month or so. Once we get through this Italian, I will sample it again, and I am praying that the silage is actually better than this sample, because if it's not, that is adding tens of thousands of pounds to my meal bill. So let's take a really quick look through the sample. Dry matter is very good. This was all lifted within 24 hours, so just shows you how quickly grass can dry if it gets a little bit of wind. I don't even think it got a lot of sun, to be honest. Very happy with the dry matters, but that would again reinforce the idea that there's a lot of dead material in this grass, because it will naturally dry out much faster than young leafy grass. So as we go back, I am expecting them dry matters to come down slightly. And I will do an update on all this to say if I was right or wrong, by the way. Proteins of 13.3, that's very poor for us. We're normally 15, 16%, so not great. But again, having this sample does help me explain what's been happening with the cows. I've been on a 20% protein nut the entire time through grazing, and the cows have been fine on it. There's been no issues. Normally I would have to cut that back, but I've held the protein where it is. Very, very glad that I have. D value in ME, very disappointing. Even at the NDF value of 45%, the energy should be higher than this. It could be a result of the dead material, or, and I really, really hope this isn't the case, it could just be a result of the cold and wet spring we had. That the grass literally just didn't have the energy there to begin with. If that is the case, my first cut silage is going to be really poor this year, and so is everyone else's. Something that might support that second theory, which is very worrying, is that the nutritionist who tested this said that the highest energy value she had seen on a first cut silage this year was 10.9. Now, I'm hoping she just told me that to make me feel better about myself, but if my first cut silage is that sort of quality the whole way back, I genuinely, like, tens of thousands of pounds is the consequences of that. We moved down to pH, 4.1. That's a perfect pH for the sort of dry matters we have. Happy with that. Ammonia, very low, again, kind of to be expected. Sugars of 4%. Now that is actually very high. You might think that's a good thing, And it kind of is a good thing, but not always. Ash is reasonable, didn't head it out, just mowed it, raked it up, so I'm happy with that. NDF of 45. Now, that is high, but not really high for a first cut. That's kind of what you'd expect. Maybe a little bit lower, like 42, 43 would be our normal first cut, but like I said, it also was cut a week later than normal, so no surprises there. ADF, is that very high? Don't honestly remember. I'll put a little words over the screen if there's something interesting about that ADF value. I don't think there is. Then we get down to two of the most important numbers on a silage sample, your VFAs and your lactic acid. So because this had a lot of dead material in it, I would expect my VFAs to be pretty high. However, 25 is a pretty normal range for VFAs. In fact, you're realistically not going to get much lower than that. So a big thumbs up for our VFAs. And our lactic acids are also pretty good. Now, there's plenty of times my lactic acids are well over 100, but again, the level of lactic acid is all linked to your dry matter. So that is part of a first cut silage. That is what my cows are currently eating. So before I go ploughing, let's summarize the situation with forage in 2024. The grazing year got off to a late and difficult start. We damaged fields just trying to get the cows out, which is why I am now ploughing them and reseeding them. Once the cows did get out, it was really hard to stay on top of the grass because there was actually decent covers on the fields. It had just been too wet to actually graze them. So we spent about 2 months trying to catch up on ourselves with grazing, trying to graze around the paddocks as fast as possible, trying to get the grass to be nice, young, leafy grass with decent covers. We finally managed that about 2 weeks ago, largely through quite a lot of pre-mowing. And as soon as we managed it, the grass growth dropped off a cliff. So whereas we should have 100 nights out a year at least, this year it's probably going to be more like 50 or 60 nights grazing if things do not improve. And them extra 50 nights in the house have a big impact on how much silage we eat throughout the summer, which means that we need more silage to cover us over the summer, so we have less silage left for the winter. You then combine that situation with the fact that our silage yields have been really poor, they were lifted late, the silage quality on our first cut might be much worse than I expected, and you're kind of starting to get into the perfect storm territory. It is really not a good situation. The door handle on my tractor's broke and I forgot and I closed it, so I have to climb in through the back window, but I'm sure this is also totally normal. Oh my goodness, these shorts are pretty small. I hope I don't flash anyone. Oh, how do I even do this? I can't hold the camera and climb into my tractor. So, as I was saying, less grazing grass growth, less silage growth means less grass for winter. And less grass for winter. Oh my goodness, no, my foot's stuck in my drone. Less grass for winter means I have to feed more meal, means it's going to cost me a heck of a lot of money. And there is no way around that. But I am trying to reduce my exposure to being short of silage. Anyway, I know that video was another video with a lot of talking. I'm trying to get across kind of the day-to-day big decisions that I have to make on this farm and the sort of challenges which I face. And they're challenges where if you're not paying attention, they can just creep up on you and cost you a lot of money very, very quickly. But if you pay attention and you're aware of what's coming down the line in 6 or 7 months, hopefully you can make good decisions early on and not cost yourself tens of thousands of pounds, just cost yourself a few tens of thousands of pounds. So it is currently 9:30 and that is me finished ploughing. Well, it's not actually, I have a little tiny bit to do in the morning, but it's actually in a different field. So this field is finished being ploughed. It's a lovely soil structure and there's no rain forecast now for pretty much the next 24 hours. So it should be fairly straightforward tomorrow to get this power harrowed, get it rolled, get it sowed, get it rolled again, and then we will get some fertilizer on it. and that will be this field finished. And then the cows will be back in here grazing this somewhere towards the end of August, I hope. Well, that's it from me today. I'm going to head home now and watch the election results. I imagine in my head that I'm going to stay up to like 3 or 4 a.m. I always think I'm going to do that, and I never make it past like 2:30 in the morning. So we'll see how it goes. I am a little bit of a political nerd. I am pretty excited to see how badly the Conservatives lose, and how well Reform UK do. It is pretty exciting. It's like one day, one night in like every 5 years. So I think it is worth at least trying to stay up for. Anyway, let's not mention politics on a YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, subscribe if you really enjoyed it, and any criticisms, compliments, suggestions, election predictions, stick them down in the comments below. I will see you next week.